Hello, everyone, and welcome to another live broadcast of edutainment or something from me, Scribelight. Hope you guys are having a good Sunday. Hope you've had a good weekend so far and a good weekend ahead of you. Hopefully the coronavirus isn't biting. And as we come into the show, hello, Raziel, Nyala, hello, the original Shroom, hello, Roxderp, hello, Kieverdam, Guten Morgen, and Somnum Nation, hello, Mike R. Hey, how's it going? So today we have a double feature. Was a song from Rocky Horror Picture Show. Science fiction, ooh, double feature. Yeah, so we have a double feature. We have two videos. One is a Wonderful World of TEDx, runs for about 20 minutes. And then after that is a 10-minute little clip of some discussion regarding hiring for a diverse workforce I came across. Now, unlike previous videos that I've live streamed like this, I have actually watched more than a couple of minutes of the TEDx presentation because, as I've mentioned in the past, for every video you see me do a scripted video on or do a live stream about, I have watched or listened to 4 or 5 others, either in part or to completion, just out of curiosity about the subject matter, and either found it not interesting or something that I didn't have anything to say about. The TEDx talk in this instance, I was curious as to where it was going long enough that by the time I realized I was like 4 or 5 minutes in, and then the guy made the turn to what his actual point was, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop it here because I want to know what happens next, but I want to do it in a live stream format just for the sake of entertainment and surprise. So that's what we're going to do today. So it shouldn't be a relatively long stream, but you know, I am long-winded, so we'll find out as we go. Uncle Thomas, hello. Swan732, hello. Duck Dog, hello. Decode, hello. X-Bubba Hotep, hello. Ping Palo, the Driving Ape Man, hello. Fairly Becca, hello. Tall Person, hello. Becca, you're not lurking if you say hello. I'm sorry, you've failed the lurkers exam. So congratulations on that. Renovescio, hello. Devil Fruit Zero, hello. Stargazer Nuts, hello. Okay, guys, so per usual, I'm going to play. Now, I've again, as usual, I have taken the raw audio and boosted it, especially in the second instance. The second video, the audio's not that great, so I boosted it quite a bit. We'll get there when we get after the TEDx talk, but so I'm going to start off playing a couple of seconds of the video. You guys tell me if you can hear it. I think I have everything set correctly. If you can't hear it, obviously, let me know in the chat. So I'm going to play the first 10 or 15 seconds. Give me a high sign if you can hear it. Here we go.
I am the proud father of 2 beautiful children.
Okay, he's the proud father of 2 beautiful children. You guys hear that? Let me know. Mott Oracle, hello. Duck Dog says, I think that's a high sign. Sounds good on my ends, as Mike R. Kieverdam says, yes, I can hear. Okay. Colleen, senior staff reporter and chief Florida correspondent, Colleen Bernier. Hello. Frosted Glass, hello. All right. Here we go. Again.
Elijah, 15, and Octavia, 12. When Elijah was in the 4th grade, he came home from school bubbling over with excitement about what he had learned.
Oh, wait. This talk contains graphic images. Oh, okay. Well, guys, trigger warning. I must have missed that. Well, I was kind of listening to it at work, not really watching it. So, okay, just trigger warning. There's going to be graphic images. And I honestly have no idea what those are. So here we go.
That day about African-American history. Now, I'm an African-American and cultural studies professor. And so, as you can imagine, African-American culture is kind of serious around my home. So I was very proud that my son was excited about what he had learned that day in school. So I said, well, what'd you learn? He said, I learned about Rosa Parks.
Okay, so Rosa Parks is going to be very integral to this first section. Now, I, amongst, I think, most American students, know at least the high level story about Rosa Parks. And so I went into this with my high level understanding of the story of Rosa Parks. Now, was I challenged in my beliefs? Well, not really, because I couldn't remember all the finer details. But we do get something of an education here. So let's proceed.
It's okay. What did you learn about Rosa Parks? He said, I learned that Rosa Parks was this frail old Black woman in the 1950s in Montgomery, Alabama. And she sat down on this bus and she had tired feet. And when the bus driver told her to give up her seat to a white patron, she refused because she had tired feet and it had been a long day and she was tired of oppression.
Okay, and that, now, just speaking for myself, I don't remember being told about her being elderly or tired feet. I think I remember hearing such things before, but I don't remember being taught that. So that was sort of my understanding. But I could understand, telephone game, things like that. All right.
And she didn't give up her seat. And she marched with Martin Luther King, and she believed in nonviolence. And I guess he must have looked at my face and saw that I was a little less than impressed by his history lesson. And so he stopped and he's like, Dad, what's wrong? What did I get wrong? I said, son, you didn't get anything wrong, but I think your teacher got a whole lot of things wrong.
Okay, you didn't get anything wrong, but your teacher got a whole lot of things wrong. Okay.
He said, well, what do you mean? I said, Rosa Parks was not tired. She was not old. And she certainly didn't have tired feet. He said, what? I said, yes. Rosa Parks was only 42 years old.
Well, now, 42 is kind of old. I mean, if you're like a kid in school, you could be described as, I'm 40. I'm 40. I'm not really old. Never mind. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, you're shocked, right? Never heard that. Rosa Parks was only 42 years old. She had only worked 6 hours that day, and she was a seamstress, and her feet were just fine. The only thing that she was tired of was she was tired of inequality. She was tired of oppression. And my son said, well, why would my teacher tell me this thing? This is confusing for me, because he loved this teacher, and she was a good teacher, a youngish, 20-something white woman, really, really smart, pushed him. So I liked her.
Yeah, but her race is important there. Why? Why is that? Okay, so now we're talking about motive, right? Okay, so we have a story here. We have a teacher telling his students something, and the information the teacher relays is inaccurate. Now, so then the question becomes, well, why would she teach inaccurate information? And then we bring up the teacher's race, and we bring up intent. Okay, now, again, I've only seen a couple of minutes of this. I haven't seen the whole thing, but I have a feeling that race and intent are going to become very important factors in the conversation going forward.
As well, but he was confused. Why would she tell me this? He said, Dad, tell me more. Tell me more about Rosa Parks.
Dr. Pepper says Kiever Dam. Zombie Teddy says Zombie Teddy says Dr. Pepper. Wow. I'm still waking up, but yes, I am having the nectar of the gods to energize me in my morning endeavors.
And I said, son, I'll do you one better. He was like, what? I said, I'm going to buy her autobiography and I'm going to let you read it yourself.
Now, see, that part I did appreciate, because that's how you learn something, right? That's how you teach a kid. You say, here's the information, read it and find out for yourself. Sometimes that is a beneficial strategy.
So as you can imagine, Elijah wasn't too excited about this new lengthy homework assignment that his dad had just given him, but he took it in stride. And he came back after he had read it, and he was excited about what he had learned. He said, Dad, he said, not only was Rosa Parks not initially into nonviolence, she said, but Rosa Parks' grandfather, who basically raised her and was light enough to pass as white, used to walk around town with his gun in his holster, and people knew that if you messed with Mr. Parks's children or grandchildren, he would put a cap in your proverbial bottom.
You know, I kind of want to see a historical reenactment show just called Mr. Parks. Just like walking around town, mean, getting ready to defend his family. I think I'd probably enjoy that show.
Right? He was not someone to mess with. And he said, I also learned that Rosa Parks married a man in Raymond who was a lot like her grandfather. Right? He would organize. He was a civil rights activist. He would organize.
Wait, how do you go from a guy walking around town armed to the teeth and defending his family, which, you know, legit, to marrying a guy who is an activist? How is that a lot like his her grandfather? That part didn't quite track to me with the information I'm given. Maybe there's something more about the grandfather or the father that I don't know, but I don't quite get that.
Events. And sometimes the events would be at Rosa Parks' home. And one time Rosa Parks remarked that there were so many guns on, because they were prepared for somebody to come busting into the door, that they were prepared for whatever was going to go down. The Rosa Parks said there were so many guns on the table that I forgot to even offer them coffee or food.
Would you like a 45 with your sugar?
This is who Rosa Parks was. And in fact, Rosa Parks, when she was sitting on that bus that day, waiting for those police officers to arrive and not knowing what was going to happen to her.
I think she knew she was going to be arrested. At least from what I've read.
She was not thinking about Martin Luther King, who she barely knew. She was not thinking about nonviolence or Gandhi. She was thinking about her grandfather, her gun-toting, take no mess gunfather.
Gunfather. Okay, that has to be a TV show now. The Gunfather. Gunfather. That's great. I know Freudian slip doesn't mean anything. Gunfather. That's just awesome.
Grandfather. That's who Rosa Parks was thinking about.
Frosted Glass says, dude, Rosa Parks wasn't Rambo. Okay, I'll be honest. I don't know much at all about the internal workings of Rosa Parks' mind, methodology, or ideology. Our speaker here says that the common understanding is that she was for nonviolence, but that's not the case. And I'm willing to accept the possibility that initially she was not a, pro-pacifist individual. Okay. But yeah, I don't, unless I'm missing something, I don't recall hearing anything about Rosa Parks being a violent militant. She may have been an aggressive activist. I can believe that. But unless someone has an example otherwise, I don't, guns involved, etc., I guess, but I don't know. He's playing up the fact that she wasn't a pacifist, maybe beyond reason. But again, it's true. I don't know the history, so like I say, I'll take our speaker's word for it in the absence of information otherwise. Because he is a professor or an educator on this type of subject matter. So,
and my son was mesmerized by Rosa Parks, and I was proud of him to see this excitement. But then I still had a problem, because I still had to go to his school and address the issue with his teacher, because I didn't want her to continue to teach the kids, obviously, false history.
Okay, so now we have a mission to correct the information. And, at the core, I don't have a problem with that. If you have a school, regardless of the subject matter, if you have a school teaching false information, and it's false and it's provably false, it's not a bad thing inherently to want to work to have that corrected in the curriculum. So on that score, I agree.
So I'm agonizing over this primarily because I understand as an African-American man that whenever you talk to whites about racism or anything that's racially sensitive, there's usually going to be a challenge. This is what white sociologist Robin DiAngelo calls white fragility.
Okay. Robin DiAngelo, white fragility. Okay, so as an African-American man, he knows when you challenge whites on race. I thought we were challenging the teacher on the facts. If she has her facts wrong, does that inherently equate to a racial component? Now this is where I stopped the video when I was first watching it, because that leap from inaccurate information provided by the school to a ideological motivation behind the false information without any evidence. I mean, to this point, he's given no evidence that the teacher's mistake in her factual relating to the kids, no evidence that it was racially motivated. Because, like I said, I have heard such things said about Rosa Parks, that she was either elderly and or part of her motivation for not getting up was, I'm tired and I don't want to get up. I've heard those things before. I don't believe I was ever taught those in school. So it could be just a mistake of sort of, colloquialisms, sort of colloquial history, let's say. Colloquial history. How's that? I can do that. We screwed up that, or Monkey screwed up that word last night too. So I don't feel too bad. Oh wait, that's Monkey. No, never mind. I'm the English major. But anyway, yeah. So as soon as he jumped from relaying incorrect information to the motivation behind this had to do with race or racism, and then of course mentioning Robin DiAngelo, that's where I was like, okay, now we're having a turn of logic. So now from this point onward, I don't know what he says next. So it's complete mystery to me. So let's find out.
She argues that, in fact, because whites have so little experience being challenged about their white privilege, that whenever even the most minute challenge is brought before them, they usually cry, get angry, or run.
Yes, because if you're challenged with an accusation of racism, what do you do? I mean, are you supposed to stand there and take it? Or if you're challenged with an accusation of racial indemnity or something. I don't know about the crying part. I suppose it depends on how you're being accused or under what circumstances or the temperament of the person being accused. But if you're being accused of something and you don't want to engage in that conversation, or you feel you're being wronged, is it unfair to become irritated or angry at such an accusation? Is it somehow a signal of your psychological fragility that you wish to remove yourself from such accusations and walk away? What is the appropriate behavior to engage in if you are a white person being accused of racism or racial bias? Just stand there silently and take it? I'm not sure. This is one of the things that I was always curious about Robin DiAngelo's theory. Because it seems like no matter what you do in response to an accusation of racism, it is a reflection of your white fragility. You cannot get upset. You cannot get angry. You cannot remove yourself or not engage in the conversation. So what are you allowed to do in such circumstances? What is permissible? Let's find out. Well, maybe we'll find out. I don't know how far he takes this.
And I have experienced them all. And so
So you often accuse white people of racial bias or racism? And that's the responses you get? Because you have to be the one doing the accusing to have such a frequent encounter with such things.
I was contemplating confronting his teacher. I wasn't happy about it, but I was like, this is a necessary evil of being a Black parent trying to raise self-actualized Black children.
Confronting the teacher. Okay, to this point, you have no idea why the teacher said the things that she said. She could have been reading from a text that is incorrect. She could have been given bad information. And, sort of like Ron Burgundy in the teleprompter, just relaying it without looking further into it. But you are assuming a motivation of this woman without having spoken to her, not being a mind reader, but simply because she is white. I mean, taking him at his word that the events are proceeding both chronologically and mentally as he's relaying them, all the information he has is his son came home from school, he was taught incorrect information about a historical event, and now he believes he has to confront this woman on her racial motivations with no evidence of such. Like I said, just trying to understand the chain of events here as we proceed.
So I called Elijah to me and I said, Elijah, I'm going to tell your teacher, I'm going to set up an appointment with your teacher and try and correct this and maybe your principal. What do you think? And Elijah said, Dad, I have a better idea. And I said, really, what's your idea? He said, we have a public speaking assignment. And why don't I use that public speaking assignment to talk about debunking the myths of Rosa Parks? And I was like, well, that is a good idea.
And, speaking sincerely, that's not a bad idea. I mean, it doesn't, now, granted, I don't know what he's going to say next, but that action in and of itself is not confrontational. It's not aggressive. It's not accusatory in any particular way. Right? It is it is a fine and civil rejoinder to misunderstandings about history. That'd be fine. That sounds like a good idea. If his son, again, taking the speaker at his word, if that was his son's idea to try to settle this, rather than his father rushing down to the school and confronting the white teacher about her racial bias and racism because she's white and her privilege, I'm going to go with the kid's idea versus Dad's reflexive idea.
So Elijah goes to school. He does his presentation. He comes back home, and I can see something positive happen. I said, well, what happened, son?
Thank you, Red Chaos Tree. Never ascribe to incompetence that which is adequately explained by malice. That's how it goes, right? Yeah. I mean, this is something that and not just, this subject matter or anything else. And don't get me wrong, I'm no saint. I've made such mistakes in the past as well. But, jumping to conclusions, assuming a motivation in the absence of evidence, filling in the blanks, the God of the gaps theory of statistical analysis or whatever else. There's a disparity here, therefore insert your ism, sexism, racism, etc. This is something that happens a lot, and it is a logical error. It sets up more animosity before you've even approached the problem because you've imagined the worst. You haven't even provided the possibility that someone could have just made a mistake, right? Either an honest mistake or maybe a lazy mistake. I think extending the benefit of the doubt in the absence of evidence of malice should be the more, I would think it would be the more proper way to approach other people in life, And I try to do that myself as much as possible. And I've been corrected myself on numerous occasions where it's like, you read that headline, right? You read that clickbait headline and you fill in the blanks about everything else about that story without actually reading the story. How many times have I done this myself, right? I get that headline, it hooks into my brain because the person did the clickbait and I fell for it, and then I react to it. And then if you actually read the story, there's either nothing there, or they're not telling the whole truth, or they're not relaying the whole facts. And then you have to disarm yourself. And I've done that several times where I'm getting ready to tweet out something, right? I'm getting ready. And just as an example, because Twitter is the most reactive, reflexive platform for jumping to conclusions. I can't count how many times I've read the headline and the little blurb of an article. I hit retweet with comment. I start typing a comment, and then I stop myself. I'm like, I should really read this first. I have to tell myself, you should really read this first. And then I go read it, and I'm like, oh, and then I delete that tweet. It's like, okay, I was led astray. I misunderstood. I've corrected myself. So I haven't learned the lesson in the sense that I always do it, but I've gotten better at taking a breath, stepping back and saying, I don't know all the facts. I am filling in the blanks with my own assumptions. And that's what we're seeing here so far. All right.
He said, well, later on in that day, the teacher pulled me aside and she apologized to me for giving that misinformation.
Oh, she apologized. Well, I thought that she was a racist. Why would she apologize for getting something wrong if she had a racial agenda? Especially to someone who is representative of the race that she's attempting to, I don't know, condescend to? I wonder how the father took this information.
And then something else miraculous happened the next day. She actually taught a new lesson on Rosa Parks.
Miraculous. So when confronted with more correct information, the teacher revised her curriculum to correct her mistake. That's a miracle, you say. Why is that a miracle, I wonder?
Filling in the gaps that she had left and correcting the mistakes that she made. And I was so proud of my son. But then I thought about it.
Uh-oh, but then he thought about it. He's proud of his son, not impressed by the teacher, mind you. Thank you, Devil Fruit Zero. Hashtag Wakanda Forever was trending on Twitter for Black History Month ending. Is he going to try to correct the history of Black Panther being a white man next? Oh, boy. I don't know where we're going next. But the fact that he just praised his son, said nothing about the, educational integrity of the teacher, and now is saying he thought about it, I feel as though we are approaching a precipice.
And I got angry. And I got real angry.
Why did you get angry? What you wanted to happen happened. And it happened in a non-confrontational way. Your son did a presentation that was already part of his schedule, made that presentation to correct the mistakes of the lesson he'd been previously taught. The teacher recognized the mistakes that she had made in her curriculum. She changed her, not only did she apologize to the student for getting it wrong, she changed her curriculum and taught a corrected curriculum. And all of this was done without confrontation, without rancor. Why would that lead you to become angry?
Why? Why would I get angry?
That's what I'm asking.
Because my 9-year-old son had to educate his teacher about his history, had to educate his teacher about his own humanity. He's 9 years old.
Wait a second. His own history, his own humanity? What are you talking about? Okay, I hate to tell you this. Rosa Parks, that whole incident is a part of American history. It helped to change and better America. It helped to change and make more perfect this union. Okay, you don't own history on the basis of race. You can fight for truth in history. You can fight against false history, certainly. But that's not his history. His history goes back 9 years. Rosa Parks' history is Rosa Parks' history. If anybody's going to be the authority on Rosa Parks' history, it's ultimately going to be Rosa Parks. And you can read her biography and take that as you will. So I don't know what you're talking about there. Secondly, his humanity. What in any of this exchange so far was a degradation of your son's humanity? The teacher taught a lesson. The lesson was flawed in its facts. Your son did again, I'm taking the speaker at his word. His son made the exact perfect decision on how to help to correct the problem. He did it in a civilized way, in a non-violent way, might I add, of simply debunking the myths about Rosa Parks, using her biography and the facts of the history. And the teacher apologized to him, corrected her lesson plan, and revised her teaching. But somewhere in that, she was denigrating his humanity to that point. Okay.
He should be thinking about basketball or soccer or, right, the latest movie.
Or maybe history like his dad. Maybe his education, which he was. He not only improved his own education, but he improved the education of his fellow students. And good for him.
He should not be thinking about having to take the responsibility of educating his teacher, his students, right?
Wait, well, was that supposed to be your responsibility then? Because you were more than happy to go down to that school and tell them a thing or two before your son came up with a better idea. I mean, your son's decision ended up educating more people, both in the moment and going forward, than you would have marching down there and telling the principal and the teacher a thing or two about their privilege. What are you talking about?
About himself, about his history. That was the burden that I carried. That was a burden that my parents carried and generations before them carried. And now I was seeing my son take on that burden too.
What are you talking about? Your son comes home from school one day, excited to tell you about what he learned in school. What he learned was inaccurate. And he came up with a perfect solution to try to change things without making it confrontational, without making it aggressive or accusatory. And yet that's not enough for you. Even after the teacher apologized, even after the teacher corrected her mistake, even after, by all anecdotal evidence, nothing about the teacher's motivations were either informed or somehow obstructed by racial bias, this is not enough for you. And now you're taking on generations in the past and you and your parents. What are you talking about?
You see, that's why Rosa Parks wrote her autobiography. Because during her lifetime, if you can imagine, you do this amazing thing. You're alive and you're talking about this, your civil rights activism, and a story emerges in which somebody is telling the world that you were old and you had tired feet and you just were an accidental activist. Not that you had been an activist by then for 20 years. Not that the boycott had been planned for months. Not that you were not even the first or the second or even the third woman to be arrested for doing that. Right? You become an accidental activist.
And your son helped to correct the misunderstanding. And to this point, you still have not explained where the teacher was getting her information. Was she relaying information as it had been taught to her? Was she relaying information from a text in error? Are you unhappy the teacher had not read Rosa Parks's personal autobiography amongst all the other subjects and all the other things that she probably had to work on teaching over the course of a year in elementary school? Okay, I understand the purpose of Rosa Parks's autobiography. I understand the purpose of going to original sources when you're talking about looking for historical accuracy. I get that. Why the anger? Someone made a mistake and they corrected it. And your son did the most brilliant thing in order to correct that mistake without leveling an accusation of racism at somebody, but simply going over facts versus myths. I mean, are we going to get to anything about the teacher, any information you found out about what she was doing, why she did it? Because we're assuming a whole lot here without much evidence. And given the fact that you're complaining about like flawed facts of history, it is amazing you are not giving us the facts to justify your anger.
Even in her own lifetime. So she wrote that autobiography to correct the record because what she wanted to remind people of.
Okay, why are you showing that picture? I really hope I don't get in trouble for that, but why are you showing that picture? What is the purpose of showing that picture in relation to a flawed history of Rosa Parks? If not to simply shock the conscience. It's like, okay, anyway.
Was that this is what it was like in the 1950s.
What does that have to do with the teacher saying things that were wrong about history? Thank you, P-Dog Knight. So the kid was taught Rosa Parks was a hero, but now she's a hero with a few more details. Got it. Yes. I mean, the end result is Rosa Parks and her story, of many, let's be honest, but more prominently, was part of what drove the civil rights movement. And her importance in that is no less like important because you get wrong her age or her feat. You want to know more about her motivations and her previous activities? Great. But what does this have to do? What does the teacher being wrong about Rosa Parks have to do with lynching?
Trying to be Black in America and fight for your rights. During the year, a little over a year that the boycott lasted, there were over 4 church bombings.
Okay, I understand that African-American history is this guy's forte. So obviously he knows something about what he's talking about. But insofar as his, I don't know, argument here, I've already lost it. I don't know if he's lost it as well. Maybe he'll circle back.
Martin Luther King's house was bombed twice. Other civil rights leaders' houses were bombed in Birmingham. Rosa Parks' husband slept at night with a shotgun because they would get constant death threats. In fact, Rosa Parks' mother lived with them, and sometimes she would stay on the phone for hours so that nobody would call in with death threats because it was constant and persistent. In fact, there was so much tension, there was so much pressure, there was so much terrorism that Rosa Parks and her husband, they lost their jobs and they became unemployable and eventually had to leave and move out of the South.
Okay, I will stipulate to all of that. I will stipulate to his expertise that all of what he has just said is factually and historically accurate. I will extend the benefit of the doubt in the absence of proof otherwise that everything he said is accurate. I have no reason to argue. what does this have to do with your son's teacher getting things wrong, being corrected, apologizing, and then correcting herself? And what does that have to do with white privilege or white fragility? You brought these concepts up, and yet to this point, none of them have anything to do with the story you are telling.
This is a civil rights reality that Rosa Parks wanted to make sure that people understood.
And so the teacher was intentionally suppressing the truth because she's a racist? I mean, I'm attempting to fill in the blank that I think you want the audience to fill in for you. You haven't said it yet. So that's my assumption of where you're going with this. I'm happy to be wrong.
So you say, well, David, what does that have to do with me? I'm a well-meaning person. I didn't own slaves. You know, I'm not trying to whitewash history. I'm a good guy. I'm a good person.
Sure. That's not exactly what I'm saying, but let's presume for a second that he's talking about the teacher, right? Because that supposedly was the focus of this whole anecdote.
Let me tell you what it has to do with you, and I'll tell it to you by telling you a story about a professor of mine, white professor.
A white professor. Okay, obviously that's going to become very important because skin color is very important to our speaker.
When I was in graduate school, who was brilliant individual. We'll call him Fred. And Fred was writing this history of the civil rights movement, but he was writing specifically about a moment that happened to him in North Carolina when this white man shot this black man in cold blood in a wide open space and was never convicted. And so it was this great book, and he called together a couple of his professor friends, and he called me to read a draft of it before final submission. And I was flattered that he called me. I was only a graduate student then, and I was kind of feeling myself a little bit. I was okay, yeah. I'm sitting around amongst intellectuals, and I read the draft.
Why do I, in the back of my head, think at some point, if I were scripting this, I'd be inserting dramatic squirrel in the next few moments
of the book? And there's a moment in the book that struck me as being deeply problematic. And so I said, Fred, as we were sitting around talking about this draft, I said, Fred, I got a real problem with this moment that you talk about your maid in your book. And he said, I could see Fred get a little, got a little up, he's got a little tight, as we say.
Obviously white fragility. Not that he saw an oncoming accusation of racism or something.
And he said, what do you mean? That's a great story. It happened just like I said. I said, can I give you another scenario?
I don't care what your personal recollection of history was for something that happened to you. I want you to change it to fit what I think is true. Didn't we start out this whole talk about trying to correct misapprehensions about history?
Now, what's the story? It was 1968. Martin Luther King had just been assassinated. His maid, domestic, we'll call her Maybelle.
We'll call her Maybelle? Okay. Did he pay this maid by any chance? Just curious.
Was in the kitchen. Little Fred is 8 years old.
Little Fred is 8 years old. Okay, I'm keeping this in mind.
Fred comes into the kitchen, and Maybelle, who he's only seen as smiling and helpful and happy, is bent over the sink, and she's crying, and she's sobbing inconsolably. And little Fred comes over to her and says, Maybelle, what is wrong? And Maybelle turns and she says, they killed him. They killed our leader. They killed Martin Luther King. He's dead. They are monsters. And little Fred says, it'll be okay, Maybelle. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. And she looked at him. She says, no, it's not going to be okay. Did you not hear what I just said? They killed Martin Luther King. And Fred, son of a preacher, he looks up at Maybelle and he says, but Maybelle, didn't Jesus die on the cross for our sins? Wasn't that a good outcome? Maybe this will be a good outcome. Maybe the death of Martin Luther King will lead to a good outcome. And as Fred tells the story, he says that Maybelle put her hand over her mouth. She reached down and she gave little Fred a hug. And then she reached into the icebox and took out a couple Pepsis, gave him some Pepsis, and sent him on his way to play with his siblings. And he said, this was proof that even in the most harrowing times of race struggle, that two people could come together across racial lines and find human commonality along the lines of love and affection. And I said, Fred, that is some BS.
Why? I mean, first, granting that an 8-year-old would be as articulate and as, let's say, I don't know, insightful, or as optimistic as that. And when we hear a lot these days about, I just had my 4-year-old tell me about the dangers of climate change, and that kind of stuff. Was he embellishing the story? Maybe. I don't know. And you don't know. That was his interpretation. Why is his interpretation incorrect? Why is an anecdotal story, of which there's no historical record, save for this person's recollection, now BS? I mean, this guy is effectively writing his biography at that point. So is his biography of events somehow less accurate than those relayed by Rosa Parks about her life and her motivations and her interpretation of events? I'm fascinated to find out why this is BS.
Fred,
why are people clapping? Yay! It's not a sign of people getting along. Yay! It's all bullshit. People getting along. It's BS. Yay!
He said, Fred was like, "What? But I don't understand, David. I'm really that's the story." I said, Fred, let me ask you a question. I said, you were in North Carolina, 1968. If Maybelle would have went to her community, you were 8 years old. What do you think the 8-year-old African-American children were calling her? Do you think they were calling her by her first name?
What?
No, they called her Miss Maybelle, or they called her Miss Johnson, or they called her Auntie Johnson. They would have never dared call her by her first name because that would have been the height of disrespect. And yet you were calling her by her first name every single day that she worked, and you never thought about it.
What are you talking about? An 8-year-old child calling someone that they consider part of the... I mean, I'm going to assume, barring information elsewise, that this child saw Maybelle as part of the family, even if she was an employee, and he called her by her first name. And what are... I know I'm saying this a lot during this, but I am just absolutely flabbergasted. We go from the kid's teacher is obviously teaching this information in order to denigrate Rosa Parks and make her less of a intentional hero than the hero she actually was, I guess. And now we're going on to, he called her by her first name, and this is problematic. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. This talk is brought to you by Pepsi. Pepsi, the cure for common racism. Well, no, you see, that's BS. The idea that Pepsi can bring people together is BS, I guess.
I said, let me ask you another question. Was Maybelle married? Did she have children? What church did she go to? What was her favorite dessert?
What does any of that have to do with that anecdote? The kid was 8. The guy's looking back on particular moments in his past that were relevant to the book he was writing. Holy cats. Yeah, no, I don't have an answer either. You're standing there waiting for somebody to answer. I'm like, yeah, the entire audience is probably going like, what does that have to do with anything?
Fred could not answer any of those questions.
So Fred's a racist. Is that what we're... I mean, again, I'm doing all the work here. I'm doing all the heavy lifting of filling in the gaps of the negative space that this guy is leaving every time he relays some story or some abstract point. I mean, so obviously Fred is a racist, I guess, because he didn't know what her favorite dessert was, because he called her by her first name, because he didn't know the whole of her personal history. And hell, I'm trying to think back to adults that I knew when I was under 10 or something and trying to think how much did I actually know about the intricacies of their lives. Like my neighbor across the street, I'm trying to think now. I knew he had he had a wife, he had two kids. He had a tennis ball that hung down in his garage so he'd know when to stop the car so he didn't hit the back of the garage. I remember that part. And I knew he was an accountant. And I lived across the street from that guy like the whole of my life up until, 19 or 20? And I couldn't tell you the guy's favorite dessert. I couldn't tell you anything about like where he grew up or anything. And I lived across the street from that guy, and we were friends. My dad was friends with him. My family was friends with his family. We barbecue. I don't even know. And that's probably the closest non-family member I grew up with. And beyond his name and his last name and his wife's name and his kids' names, I couldn't tell you what his wife's maiden name was. I couldn't. What kind of expectations does this guy supposedly have for people to prove they're not racist if they don't know the intimate facts about someone's life that they grew up with? I'm curious. Does your son know his teacher's favorite dessert? Does that make your son a racist if he doesn't know that?
I said, Fred, this story is not about Maybelle. This story is about you.
Well, yes, because it's his anecdote. Sorry. It's a story about you. It's a story about how little 8-year-old Fred was racist in trying to give some comfort to someone he cared about who is in distress in the only way that he knew how from his upbringing.
I said, this story made you feel good, but this story is not about Maybelle. The reality is, what probably happened was Maybelle was crying, which was not something she customarily did. So she was letting her guard down.
And by chance, might you tell us how you know what Maybelle was thinking back then with your psychic powers of today? I am dying to know how your assumptions about what someone else decades ago was thinking or feeling are now a cudgel with which you can beat over the head of a professor who was 8 at the time of the story.
And you came into the kitchen and you caught her at a weak moment where she was letting her guard down. And see, because you thought of yourself as just like one of her children, you didn't recognize that you were, in fact, the child of her employer.
And so you're going to hold an 8-year-old to account for not grasping the intricacies of the social stratification and class stratification in the household. Okay.
And she found herself yelling at you. And then she caught herself realizing that if I'm yelling at him and he goes back and he tells his dad or he tells mom, I could lose my job.
Uh-huh. I suppose it might be possible. Because you know from reading one anecdote in a book, the relationship, the history, the candor as existed between people you never knew because of your assumptions about these people in the absence of information. Tell me again why your son's teacher made a mistake then. Why it was so harmful if you are doing it yourself.
And so she tempered herself, and she ended up, even though she needed consoling, she ended up consoling you and sending you on your way, perhaps so she could finish mourning in peace.
Perhaps. Or perhaps, as the story is said, the 8-year-old's words gave her some kind of comfort. You don't know.
And Fred was stunned.
Yeah, I'm sure Fred was stunned that somebody was trying to tell him his history.
And he realized that he had actually misread that moment. And see, this is what they did to Rosa Parks, because it's a lot easier to digest an old grandmother with tired feet who doesn't stand up because she wants to fight for inequality, but because her feet and her back are tired and she's worked all day.
Is it easier for you to digest that an 8-year-old kid was operating under racism? Is it easier for you to digest that your son's teacher was operating under racism? Does that make it easier for you to process misunderstandings or mistakes or the motivations of others that you see around you simply based on the knowledge that they were white at the time that they did whatever they did? Does that make it easier for you to digest than extending the benefit of the doubt to people's motivations and their intentions, unless or until you have evidence to the contrary? Maybe. Is it easier to digest that everyone is a villain and you are internally a victim?
See, old grandmothers are not scary, but young, radical Black women who don't take any stuff from anybody are very scary.
I don't know if I'd call 42 young. Okay. I mean, Rosa Parks was not some elderly grandmother. I'll give you that. Now, by 1950s or 60s standards, 42 is probably a little bit older than it is now, obviously, but okay, by our perspective. But she wasn't a young woman or anything at that point.
Who stand up to power and are willing to die for that. Those are not the kind of people that make us comfortable.
And that has what to do with your kid's teacher? That has what to do with that professor? What does that have to do with anything? And who are you talking about? Who are you accusing of discomfort, might I ask?
So you say, what do you want me to do, David? I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I have no idea what you want me to do, because I didn't know that this was a call to action about anything. I thought this was a story about your son's teacher and her inherent white fragility. You brought up Robin DiAngelo. White fragility, white privilege. You haven't said anything directly about either the teacher or this professor, except to, I guess, implicate them without accusing them. Something like that, maybe?
Well, what I would say to you is there was a time in which if you were Jewish, you were not white. If you were Italian, you were not white. If you were Irish, you were not white in this country. It took a while before the Irish, the Jews, and the Italians became white.
Okay.
Right? There
Right.
was a time in which you were othered, when you were...
No, there hasn't been a time when I've been othered. Oh, wait, except for presentations like this where my skin color determines my way of thinking. Except for now. You're right, except for now.
The people on the outside. Toni Morrison said, if in order for you to be tall, I have to be on my knees, you have a serious problem. She says, white America has a serious, serious problem.
White America has a serious problem. So serious that a teacher apologizes to her non-white student for getting historical facts about a non-white woman wrong, and then going to the effort of correcting herself and teaching the correct information going forward, without confrontation, without animus, without rancor, because your 9-year-old son did the wise and peaceful thing to resolve a problem. Thank you, ex-Bubba Hotep. And you become white, and you become white, and you become white. Oh, like Oprah Winfrey? And you become white. Yeah, I guess so. This is where we're going.
To be honest, I don't know if race relations will improve in America.
Well, you're right. You know what? I know whether they will or not. They won't. Because as long as people assume the motivations and character of others on the basis of their skin color in the absence of any other information and move through the world with that kind of discriminatory mindset and promote it on stage as though it were a virtue, as though it were proven fact, because a white woman wrote a book in which she apologizes for being white. As long as people like that exist, you're right. Race relations will not improve in America.
But I know that if they will improve, we have to take these challenges on head on.
And your son did that. However, he was taking on the challenge of correcting information without accusation. Are you adult enough to do that yourself?
The future of my children depend on it. The future of my children's children depends on it.
Sounds like your children might be wiser than you are, honestly.
And whether you know it or not, the future of your children and your children's children depends on it too. Thank you.
Whitewashing Black history. Okay, honestly, and I'm not being facetious here. The facts the teacher got wrong about Rosa Parks, her age and her tired feet being part of the motivation for her not getting up. How is that whitewashing? Honestly, how is that specifically whitewashing? How is that removing anything about the racial component of Rosa Parks' situation and her eventual arrest and her eventual significance in the civil rights movement? How does either of those facts, her age, her tired feet, how is that whitewashing? How? How does that professor's story about trying to comfort someone in distress that he cared about, how's that whitewashing? That's his recollection. That was his interpretation. He wasn't trying to mind read Maybelle insofar as he was trying to encapsulate how he felt about the situation and how he interpreted it at the time. I mean, the fact that the person telling the story is white, I guess everything he says is whitewashing. I'm just, it ends there, guys. I'm gonna close this one out. That was amazing. That, I mean, you know, when he talked about how the professor's story said more about the professor than it did about Maybelle, that entire talk said far, far more about our speaker than it did anything about the misbehaviors of other people or the misapprehensions or errors in history relayed by other people. It's actually kind of amazing, if you'll forgive my exasperation. But yeah. Okay, so I'll take a couple minutes for comments from you guys, and then we'll move on to the next video. This is Kyle says, why does it even matter? I don't know. It matters to him. The race and the interpretation of motivation of other people are exceedingly important to him. I mean, I'm given a certain level of hope that his son operated beyond those assumptions and beyond those accusations, got to the heart of the matter, and what was the result? A correction, an apology, a better education, not only for his fellow students, but students going forward in that class. What about that teacher's actions said that she was racist, said that she was whitewashing things, said that she was intentionally trying to denigrate somebody in history? I don't know. Neither did our speaker ever say, but he left the door open by implication without direct accusation. It's very, I don't know that I have the word for it, you know. Disingenuous might be the most polite word I can come up with. Data Wasteland, Scribe Light, please tell me, Scribe, he's not invited to Moonbase. Moonbase is open to all. There's no restriction to Moonbase, you know, so long as you respect other people's rights and don't try to blow anybody out of an airlock. Now, if you try to blow someone in an airlock, well, it just has to be consensual. That's all. Let's see. Sorry, Jim says, you can't make yourself feel better without making someone else feel worse. Well, and he was talking about Toni Morrison, who says, if you need to feel tall by making me get on my knees, well, what was he looking for other than perpetual apologies from white people for being white? Like immediately you're white, therefore, you know, your thinking is wrong. Or anything you say that's inaccurate is motivated by race. Or any bad reaction you might have to my accusing you of racial motivation is just more reflective of how your race makes you fragile. I just, okay. So anyway, let's see. Check your logic, Sergeant. No, oh, okay, that's somebody else. Sorry. Let's see. Kiefer Dan, is it possible? Or sorry, it is possible to build black people up without tearing white people down. Well, take race out of the equation. Focus on an individual. I mean, his son grew up a lot that day. Can you imagine that? His son, when being confronted with his dad's reflexive, I think irrational and aggressive solution to a situation where he didn't have all the facts, nor did he seem to care about having all the facts, in a situation where apparently facts were supposed to be the thing that mattered, his son came up with the much better idea. The 9-year-old was more adult than his father. And yet the father can't seem to go with that, and especially the outcome of it. That wasn't enough. Praised his son for his wisdom, and rightfully so. Said nothing of what the teacher did and what it said about the teacher. Because that's irrelevant. Because she's still white, and she still said incorrect things. And on the flip side, the professor was still white, and he said things that the father feels are incorrect interpretations because of his assumptions of what reality was for those individual people because of their race. Okay, moving on. So this video is a 10-minute little snippet of a conversation regarding recruiting a diverse workplace. Now, I have watched nothing of this video, save for the first like 30 seconds to figure out if the sound quality was good enough to broadcast. Now, as a consequence to that, I have boosted the audio considerably because the audio quality in the original recording is not that great. So here's the thing, guys. I'm going to let it play for a few seconds. You guys need to tell me if you can understand, at least for the most part, what people are saying. Because if it is complete gibberish for you guys, if you can't make it out, I'm probably just going to call it here. I don't want to, you know, pump stuff into your ears that is unintelligible. So let's go for a few seconds, and I'll need your guys' feedback in the chat if this is worth continuing with. Okay, Here we go.
Just a little bit of background as to why we're doing the event. What's the focus of the event? Recruitment and recruiting diverse workforce. I think many of you can agree that inclusion and inclusive cultures definitely go a long way in building, diversity and inclusion in the world of work. But we sometimes trivialize the fact that actually having a diverse workforce is the first step in enabling that inclusive dialogue to happen. And hopefully today we can talk about some of the challenges that we're still seeing when it comes to recruitment and diversity in recruitment. So,
okay, so yeah, it is muffled. I can't help that. Can you understand what they're saying? I guess is the biggest. Now at some point here, they're going to move over to a table, I think, well, from the pictures, and start talking through stationary microphones, and then we get to a set camera view. So it might improve. Passes with the volume up. I can understand them, but it still sounds like gibberish. I can hear it. Had to turn up the volume a little bit. Okay, this is me having turned up the original volume by 10 decibels. So yeah. All right. Well, again, if it gets to a point where it's just nonsense, I mean, nonsense insofar as being able to understand it, I might end it. But let's see where we're going.
The figures that I guess we're seeing at the start of this decade, 2020, can you believe it, are still very shocking. And it still demonstrates the amount of work that we in HR have a duty to do to inform and to move our agenda forward.
We in HR have to move our agenda forward. I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that HR's agenda would be to hire the best people for the job. But given the name of this presentation, that puts that notion into doubt.
So I just want to share some of those statistics because they very much motivate and galvanize me and get me out of bed every morning, but I think it's worth sharing. Firstly, we saw the top 100, so Green Park Recruitment.
Okay, and then they fade out and cut away to this. Again, guys, this is the editing done by the original video. I didn't do this, so I don't know where we're going with this. This is a complete mystery to me. Panel event: Judith German, Margaret Achening, Nick Day, Devyani Vishampayan. I don't know who these people are. I don't know who they represent. Here we go.
Any which way you like. Devyani, should we start over here?
Okay. So I'm Devyani Vaishampayan. I have had a fairly long career in FTSE 100 businesses as a Chief Human Resource Officer. What I do now is two things. I run an angel investment fund, which invests in artificial intelligence-based HR tech startups.
I'm getting the feeling this is going to be very boring, guys. I'll give it another couple minutes on the off chance it starts to pick up. It's only 10 minutes long, but I might have found a dud here, both in sound quality and in content. It'll be the first time, but let's find out.
And we also run a human capital digital innovation hub, which is a 6-month program to help corporates experiment and engage with AI-based data startups. So I guess it's no surprise when I talk to this. You've seen the internet, you've seen social media. The third wave is AI, and it can be hugely effective in leveraging and helping in the diversity agenda.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Judith Germain, and I am a chartered fellow of CRPD, author, trainer, and maverick change maker.
Maverick Changemaker. That's an interesting self-title.
What I do is ensure that I help organisations provoke maverick leadership.
You help organizations provoke, did you say elaborate leadership? I'm not even sure if that's what she said, but I help organizations provoke. Okay.
Everywhere they are. So maverick leaders are very good at having a diversity in thought.
Diversity of thought, you say? Okay.
Seeing things a different way, and that's exactly what we need this decade moving forward.
Diversity of thought. All right, I'm going to keep that in mind.
Hi, my name is Nick Day. I'm a founder of JGA Recruitment, which is a specialist HR and payroll recruitment consultancy. I'm also the host of the HR L&D podcast. I'm fortunate enough to have had both Devyani and Jude on the podcast in the past, know them well. I'm also host of the
Oh, dude, down in front. Come on.
Payroll podcast. And I also run a private HR leaders WhatsApp group, which is I know some of the people in the room already. Top tip for me, if I was to provide one, would be that we really need to.
Oh, look at this guy. Is he doing this intentionally? It's like, I'm just going to sit here. Yeah, that's man-spreading right there. Yeah, Britain's got a real big problem with man-spreading.
Diversify the talent pools that we're accessing. In my view, there's a huge over-reliance on the likes of LinkedIn, which is a great tool in its own, but it does limit our field of talent that we can access. So I think one example would be in our business, we are members of 119 different groups on Facebook.
Yeah, the guy with the camera's like, I'm going to try to maneuver around this. Okay, yeah, guy, this might end up being a lemon, but I want to keep going.
Which allows us to tap into different types of talent. We have access on Twitter and Instagram and other social channels as well. But each social channel gives you a different demographic and a different diverse access to diversity of talent. And I think at the moment there's an over-reliance on one particular channel. I think if we can expand that, it would be a huge difference.
Hi, my name is Margaret Chin. I am a business psychologist, a researcher, and a consultant in D&I.
A consultant in D&I, okay, diversity and inclusion. Although that phrase is changing now because they start saying DEI as in diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DENI, something like that. So maybe that hasn't quite reached across the pond yet.
Top tip.
Top tip. I think I did a video on top tips before.
I would say the devil is in the detail and the disparity. What's the detail? The detail is your data. You're trying to attract diverse talent, you can't for some reason. Where is it? It's something you can't look for, you've looked everywhere. It's about what kind of data do you have? What are you looking for? Do you know what you're looking for?
Well, you'd have to define diversity first before we knew what we were looking for. Because I would assume you're looking for people who have the qualifications to fulfill the job requirements of the job that is open. And by talking to them, you can sort of figure out, okay, do they have the requirements? Are they a good fit, attitude-wise, experience-wise, etc.? I mean, diversity of thought is great after they've met all the requirements of the actual job. But I don't think that diversity of thought is the diversity they're talking about here. I just have a feeling.
So if you start somewhere, if you start from where to start, just remember the detail.
Amazing. I love
Yeah, down in front.
I just realised I forgot my top tip. So my top tip is really, if you're looking for diverse talent, is to think about the change impact that the individual is going to make. So quite often there's a lot of industries that will look at, say, financial services. If you're not into financial services, we don't want you, for example. But what that does is restrict the talent that you have, and maybe what it is that you think you're looking for in terms of that industry, work out what the impact that want the new person to provide, and then look for that individual.
How do you know ahead of time what impact someone is going to have on the industry? How do you hire for that? I mean, if they have a raft of experience that says they're going to bring something completely new to your company, not necessarily industry as the whole, because you have competing companies within an industry, how are you going to know ahead of time the impact they're going to have unless they have a proven record of either leadership or skill or knowledge or something else? I mean, in that sense, sure, diversity of thought is important. I don't know if you can judge the impact they're going to have until after you've hired them, because they could suck. I mean, because, you know, it's never been the case that someone on paper and in person in the initial interview passes all aces, and then they actually start working at a place and they turn out to be a problem. Did you imagine the impact would be negative when you hired them? I don't see that. It's kind of that's why you have trial periods with people before they get their insurance, to make sure they're going to stick around, to make sure you're going to want them to stick around.
So, thank you very much, panel. So it's been really interesting.
Oh, we didn't even get the panel discussion. Okay, you know what, guys? I'm just going to stop this here. Not only is the sound muffled and the camera work is obviously all over the place, but we don't even get to see the meat of the actual discussion about the subject I thought this was. Yeah, this is one of the dangers of bringing in a video that you haven't actually watched all the way through yet. You assume from the title and the subject that you know what it's going to be about. You see a panel of people and you assume it's going to be a panel discussion. I guess I should have been suspicious when I saw a panel discussion that was only 10 minutes long. But yeah, there you go. Let's see. Kiefer M says, do another video. I do have another video. I wasn't sure about it. It's 24 minutes long, and I'm not sure about the audio of that either. And I haven't boosted the audio of it. Okay. So I'll throw it in here as sort of a blind test. At worst, it'll be another dud like the previous one. And you'll get entertainment out of the fact that I had my first stream where I didn't complete the videos I actually put up. But let me try here real quick. See what I can do. Oh boy, let's see if this can actually work. I'm doing this on the fly, as it were. Okay, so let's share the screen, share audio, Chrome tab. Now, if you guys can't hear this one, again, I haven't done anything to the audio, so that might be the problem. So I'll give it a test run for a couple of minutes here, or a couple seconds, because I haven't watched this yet, and we'll see what happens. So just for reference, this is called Unlearning Racism Workshop. Unlearning Racism Workshop. Okay.
Into USC to be on the rugby team, who's probably never even touched it for.
I can barely hear what's being said.
For me, that's the correlation. It may not have been racist, but it didn't look as if, hey.
I want to hear the speaker speak before I call this off.
Straight A's, but get into USC, but we're going to take this money from this person who is privileged, who also happens to be white, and put this person into the school for this.
I mean, I can hear the guy barely.
So it did kind of correlate.
One more?
Well, I think that.
No, sorry guys, I'm not going to do that either. Maybe if I boosted the sound, but I was uncertain about this one because I knew it was recorded, on the other side of the room or whatever. Okay, do I have anything else? Well, I do have something else. I guess I could do this. This is one that I was thinking about doing a scripted content for. So why not? All right. So this is here's what this is. This is the official YouTube advisory video on how to make your videos as a YouTube content creator. This is how to make your videos more diverse. Okay, so this is the official educational video from YouTube, or at least from YouTube's channel. Okay, so this one should be legible even without me having boosted the audio. And we'll give this a shot. It's only a couple of minutes long. Oh, sorry, inclusive videos. Inclusive videos. All right, here we go.
YouTube's mission is to give everyone a voice and show them the world. If you're
I can show you the world.
looking for ways to make your content more inclusive and appeal to a broader audience, then you are watching the right video. We're going to cover tips on how your YouTube channel can foster greater inclusion and show you how your channel can be a force for good.
Okay, and that's what I want. I want my channel to be a force for good and to be more inclusive. Because obviously, the more inclusive I am, the larger audience I get. And the more good that I do, the gooder that I am. Right?
Hi, I'm Dr. Natoki Ford, founder and CEO of FlySide Enterprise, an education and media consulting firm focused on leveraging the power of storytelling to promote social change.
Leveraging storytelling to promote social change. Okay. That doesn't sound amorphous or abstract at all. Social change in what way?
I've partnered with YouTube to develop tools that build awareness about the importance of diverse representation and help empower creators to produce more inclusive videos.
Well, now, just in my defense, before we move on, if you look at my library, you know, my body of work, as it were, on my channel, you will see a diverse assortment of speakers and topics and ideas. I mean, it's just all over the place. So on that score, I think I've got it covered, but maybe I'm wrong.
What I'll dive into today comes from research from leading institutions as well as feedback we collected from quite a few top YouTube creators and partner organizations.
Are those educational institutions including Stanford by any chance? I have no idea. I just, you know, Stanford's kind of a meme on my channel if you've paid attention. There's a playlist, a Stanford education, just a shameless plug.
Before we jump in, it's important to talk about the difference between diversity and inclusion.
It is important to define your terms. I'm glad you're doing this. Okay, tell us what the difference is between diversity and inclusion. Even though simple context clues and a basic vocabulary should be able to tell you that, what do you mean when you say diversity and inclusion?
Diversity means different voices can be represented, but inclusion means all those different voices are actually being heard.
Represented versus heard voices. If you can hear someone's voice, they are being heard. And different voices are presumably coming from individuals, and they are therefore presumably at least representing themselves. That is, unless you're going to attribute one person's voice to representing an entire demographic. And short of them having been elected to such a position by their constituency, they don't represent anyone but themselves.
It's presence versus power.
Presence versus power. Diversity and inclusion. Diversity is presence, inclusion is power. I can see how that can make sense the way they mean it, I suppose. This might just be sophistry, guys. I don't know.
Another way to think about the distinction is that diversity is inviting different people to a party.
And inclusion is asking them to dance. How many times have we heard this analogy now?
While inclusion is actually asking everyone to dance.
Verna Myers. Okay, I don't think I've ever heard the person attributed with making this analogy. Honestly, I'm going to write that down. I'm going to write that down for future reference, because if I can find a TEDx or a presentation from Verna Myers at some point, I would actually like to take a look at that. I don't know if I'll do a video on it, but I would be curious to take a look at.
So let's talk about the opportunity here. On-screen representation in media is improving, but it's not fully reflecting the diversity of the world. Are you ready for some stats?
Oh, I love stats. I just adore stats. Will you put these stats into context? Will you not play the God of the Gaps theory of statistical analysis? I don't know. I'm curious.
In the US, women are 51% of the population.
Oh, so they're not a minority. Just want to make that clear for a moment, because for some reason I think that might become relevant in the near future.
But only 40% of television broadcast leads.
So unless there is an exact proportional representation based on population numbers, then there's a problem. Okay, I will keep that in mind.
Multicultural people comprise 39% of the population, but just 22% of broadcast leads.
Define multicultural. Because if I look at a man from Texas and I look at a man from Russia, save for some, I don't know, clothing choices, would I be able to tell the difference? Because they're from different cultures. I don't know what that means, but multicultural. I mean, I'm a combination of what? Scottish and German and Belgian. And then my next door neighbor is probably a combination of French. Well, not my next door neighbor. My best friend was French, Native American, and I think, I forget, but something like that. And so, I mean, we're multicultural. If you're talking about like Hereditary, but we're all Americans, we all spoke English, and I don't remember any of us like knowing the language of our ancestors. I couldn't speak Gaelic to save my life. I'm pretty sure she didn't know French. So
here's another one. 20% of Americans between the ages of 18 to 34 identify as LGBTQ+, while they only represent 9% of primetime regulars.
Okay, so again, there has to be a 1-for-1 percentile to percentile point of representation of all various demographics in all these various entertainment platforms or entertainment categories. Otherwise, what? I mean, what is the implication? This is what I'm talking about, God of the Gaps theory. So if there's fewer women represented as broadcast news people versus the actual population of women, the cause for that is, if there's fewer LGBTQ primetime regulars than the population, then the cause for that is, because right now she's just throwing out statistics. And, you know, for the sake of argument, I will stipulate to her statistics. What is she trying to say is the motivation, the mentality that produces these statistics? Do you think she'll get there? I don't know. Let's find out.
And one more. 13% of Americans have a disability, but only 2% are actually seen as primetime regulars on TV.
Okay, so that means what? As I've said so many times, here's a statistical disparity. Now you see that space? You see that space between the 13% and the 2% where there's those three little symbols there? Okay, I want you to imagine those three little symbols aren't there for a second. I want you to imagine that there's just empty space between those two numbers. All right? That empty space, I will bet you, is what she is hoping we will fill with our imaginations on cause, on intent, on ideology of some kind that leads from the top statistic to the bottom statistic. I mean, I will be curious to see if she actually gives us her belief of what fills in that gap, of what leads one to the other.
YouTube is different. Unlike traditional media, YouTube provides a forum for user-generated videos.
It does do that, doesn't it? It does do that. And
therefore, you, as a creator, have the opportunity to help address representation gaps.
is that my job? I mean, I represent me. I don't assume to represent anybody else. I make videos and I cover subjects and content that I find interesting or I find, commentable, for lack of a better word, which I'm sure there is one. I'm just an English major. I'm not here to push an agenda necessarily, as far as I know, except for my own thoughts and opinions. And I try to look for a variety of ideas, a variety of subjects, or a variety of perspectives on particular subjects. I don't pay close attention to the physicality of the people who are speaking so much as I pay attention to the uniqueness or the entertainment value, or maybe even just the objectionable nature of the arguments or ideas they are promoting. That's how I try to operate with my channel. I'm just speaking for myself. She's obviously talking to a much wider audience, but then this is supposed to be advice for me as a YouTube content creator.
So why should you care?
Yeah, why should I care?
YouTube videos are highly consumed and tremendously powerful.
Well, some of us more than others. You know, I mean, Sinatra's got like 100,000 subscribers or 130 or something now. I'm not jealous or anything. I'm really not.
It's actually the most widely used online platform for US adults and teens, and 41% of YouTube users are multicultural.
Define multicultural. I don't know what that means in this context. If you're talking about simple, like hereditary factors, like, you know, one relative came from here and one relative came from there, or are you talking about like households where they speak more than one language, or they practice customs that are not inherently American or something? I don't know what that means, multicultural.
Like other media, YouTube videos reflect and shape culture and can influence the public's perceptions of certain subjects, careers, and marginalized people.
Yeah, and I see that every time I do a video. I see someone on a YouTube video trying to influence other people's perspectives or ideas. Sometimes with fallacious information or reasoning, like in our first subject. It's kind of why I do this too. But anyway.
All media can either reinforce biases and stereotypes, or it can be a tool to help counter stereotypes and reduce biases.
Or it can promote the idea that people think a particular way because of their race. I guess that is kind of in there somewhere in promoting biases. Yeah.
Increasing diversity in media is not only good for society, it's also good for business. And
oh, the business case. Okay, the business case for diversity. When it comes to YouTube videos, most of which are created by individual people sitting in their bedrooms or working on a computer by themselves. Okay? Because, you know, not all of us are giant channels with, you know, multi-user networks or something. It might just be me sitting in a room by myself. God, I'm sad.
Film, a more diverse cast can boost gross revenue. At every budget level, a film that has at least a 30% non-white cast outperforms less diverse films in the opening weekend at the box office.
Where is the source for this information? I'm just curious. You know, non-white cast. So are you telling us that we need to reduce the number of white people that we, I don't know, have in our videos? Is that the advice that you're giving us? Because that sounds like the advice you're giving us. The business case for diversity is exclude people on the basis of their race and you'll perform better at the box office, even though YouTube is not a box office.
It's also worth noting that many of the most successful movies have appealed to diverse audiences. So how can your YouTube channel help foster greater inclusion?
I don't know. How can my YouTube channel help foster greater inclusion? The Dead Kaiser says, I didn't know Scribe watches Mitten Squad. I watch all of Mitten Squad. Well, at least those games that I've actually played. Mitten Squad is hilarious. The challenges he puts himself through and his humor and his references. That guy's funny. If you guys don't know Mitten Squad, if you like Fallout games, if you have any love of Fallout, look up Mitten Squad and watch his Fallout challenges and stuff. They're amazing. He does other stuff too, but it's the Fallout ones that first attracted my attention.
It's important to remember we all have unconscious bias.
Do we all have unconscious bias? All right. Is yours on your sleeve by any chance? Are you going to tell us what yours are? Are you going to confess so that we get along with you? What are your unconscious biases? And if they're unconscious, how do you know that they're there?
which can influence the people we choose to work with, the topics we cover, and which perspectives we decide to include.
Yes, I have an unconscious, no, I have a bias against information that is questionable or accusations without evidence, or conspiracy theories of intent on people without actually speaking to the people directly. I have that kind of bias. So if you look at my content, watch the videos, listen to the comments I make, maybe you can derive what my biases are. But then I am my own worst witness. So I leave it to my viewers to decide whether or not what I'm doing or what I'm saying is helpful or entertaining for them. Because I do this basically for me. This is my catharsis. This is my trying to keep abreast of what's going on in the world to a certain extent and what might not be promoted or advertised or reported on that much. That's just me.
If you're ready to explore how you can make your videos more inclusive and help level the playing field on YouTube, here are some questions you can ask yourself to get started.
Okay, the questions I can ask myself. All right, let me get my drink of water here. Okay. I am ready. Ask me the important questions.
Who's on my team?
Well, okay. If we're talking about my scripted content or content such as this, me. I mean, if we're just talking about production, me. Now, if we're talking about the show, it's me and everybody in the chat. Everyone who deigned to come out here and join me today to go along with this little adventure of multi-videos that wasn't even planned. So it's me and my audience. That's about as inclusive as I can get. Now, if we're talking about Lords of the Night, it's me, Monkey, Satsu, Sinatra, Weibo, SDA, Tailed Feature, your boy Pat, God, who else? I mean, just the plethora of Lords of the Night. Anybody who comes on, any one of our friends who joins us, Jack Cochran, the people who donate the stories, Colleen Bernier, Massive Dynamics, Frosted Glass, etc., etc. That's my team. That's my team. Okay. All right. So that's the answer to that question. Who's on my team? Me, my friends, and everybody who watches.
Diversity is a driver of innovation. Teams that have diverse perspectives are more creative and more innovative.
Okay, that is true. And Monkey and Satsu and myself have certainly different perspectives and different ideas about things because we all come from different places and different rafts of knowledge. Sometimes we clash, sometimes we agree, sometimes we inform one another of things we didn't know about. Like Monkey and I talking about movies that Satsu's never seen. Same went for SDA. Okay, sounds good so far. I think I'm on track. I think I got question 1 covered. All right.
What topics are covered and what perspectives are included in my videos?
Let's see, topics covered. Well, we're talking in the broad strokes. Let's see. I've done feminism, diversity and inclusion, politics to a smaller degree, immigration, what else? Science, or I should say gender politics, for lack of a better phrase, education, social justice, what else? Toxic masculinity. Yeah. Okay. I'm sure there are others in there that were one-offs or things that kind of, crisscrossed over each other. Oh, crisscrossing, intersectionality. Yeah. Okay. So I've done that kind of stuff before. And technology, like where they wanted to automate the voting process. That crazy freaking idea that reared its ugly head in the Iowa caucuses. Yeah. Okay. I did that one too. And what perspectives are included in my videos? Okay. Well, my videos, my perspective, and the perspective of the speaker. So I'm entertaining the ideas of the speaker and commenting on them. And generally speaking of the speaker, generally speaking, I produce the entirety of the subject's pitch, whatever it is. Unless in the rare case where I edit something out, it's because it was completely superfluous to the main argument or presentation of the person. So the perspective of the subject and my reaction to it. Okay? All right, that's my answer to that question.
Start by looking at the type of videos that you're making. Consider the topics that you discuss and the viewpoints that you include, especially those that may differ from your own.
Well, you see, that is the beauty, in my mind, of the kind of content that I do. I present a perspective, a viewpoint, that is entirely different from my own, for the most part. Or that when I go into it, I assume is going to differ from my own. And I present it in its entirety. And I break it down from my own perspective. So ultimately, you're getting the full argument, pitch, viewpoint of the subject, and you're getting my interpretation, my reaction, my critique of it. So for every video, even those where I'm just reading an article, for the most part, except for my soapboxing videos where it's just me talking, for every video, you're getting at least two perspectives. Mine and the subjects. And more often than not, they completely differ from one another.
What do people see when they visit my channel?
A sad, sad, and argumentative man. Next.
When thinking about what appears in a video like talent, voiceover, or animations, is there diversity among the voices represented?
Well, I'm the one constant, except for those very rare videos where I don't put any commentary at all and just let the subject matter speak for itself. But there's always at least one or two or five other voices talking, including my own.
We tend to default to what feels easiest, so decision-making can be largely driven by convenience.
You're right. I am lazy as hell.
Consider going beyond your usual circles and sources.
I've thought about it. I try to find random stuff. I don't look at, I've got a whole bunch of specific channels that I follow that have interesting content that comes out. But generally speaking, most of the videos that I find are the results of just random word searches I do on YouTube and then setting the when was this published filter for like the last week or the last 24 hours and just seeing what I come up with. And as a result, I had a lot of TEDx videos because TEDx is a single platform, but it has a plethora of subject matter. So it's not low-hanging fruit insofar as it has stuff that's easy necessarily to digest, but it's low-hanging fruit as a place to go for variety. Elsewise, you guys have seen videos that have come from like, who knows where I got that thing, right? Like the couple of things I just kind of passed over because the audio quality was bad. Those are just random things I came across that had 0 views and were on a channel that had like 2 subscribers or something. That's just how I operate.
How do I engage and support other creators?
Well, there was a time where I did a series of videos. You can find the playlist on my channel called Criminally Undersubbed. When I was starting out early, I thought that when I got to 500 subscribers, I said, I would start trying to promote other smaller channels that I thought deserved attention. And so there's a handful of those on there. I stopped doing it because I started getting random requests from strangers to do one for them because I was putting effort into promoting someone else's channel in a completely isolated video. And when it became awkward for me to say, I have no idea who you are, and I'm not going to promote somebody because they asked me to, I'll promote people that I come across and think deserve it. I stopped doing that. So that was how I did it initially. Otherwise, I invite people on to Lords of the Night from time to time. Especially early on, I'd invite people that I came across that were interesting, that I hadn't met before or just talked to a couple of times. I still do that occasionally. I do Familiar with the Matter, which sometimes has other creators on there, but sometimes just has viewers. And engage with on Twitter. and sharing videos of creators that I like, and also telling everybody at the top of Lords of the Night to be sure that they share videos of creators that they like, whoever they are. Because unfortunately, YouTube, who made this advisory video, does very little to engage and support other creators. Now, with the exception of, obviously, the entire platform and tools necessary to upload videos and broadcast like this, that's true. And I'm not ungrateful. That's why I still think that Super Chat is a fair exchange.
Think about how you can engage creators who have diverse perspectives, and consider how your channel can support creators from underrepresented communities.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Why do I have to put that filter up? If I like someone's ideas, if I like their perspective, isn't that enough? I then have to put a filter on of quote unquote underrepresented communities? I'll tell you what, YouTube, every small content creator out there is unto themselves an underrepresented community on YouTube. Because of the way you guys just do not help or promote channels. I mean, you give us the tools to do so, to make a channel and everything else. That's true. But the algorithm, the trending, the Byzantine nature of what will or will not be promoted by YouTube, yeah, you guys need to work on promoting underrepresented communities like your own users.
Maybe do a collab.
You know, I haven't done a collab in a while. It's been a while. It's true. I did a lot of those in the early days. I should think about that again. You know, Tailed Feature and I have been meaning to do a collaboration for quite a while. We just keep kind of hitting and missing on that one. Try to figure that one out someday.
How do I think about audiences when making my content?
How do I think about audiences? I don't. I think about, is this interesting to me? Is this something that I have something to say about? Is this something that I will enjoy, even if it's frustrating, talking about? Because presumably, if I'm finding it interesting, then the people who've subscribed to my channel will find it interesting. If I start working on a project and halfway through I go like, I don't know that I care enough about this to continue, I stop making the video. Because if at least I don't find it engaging, if I don't find it interesting enough to make comment on, I presume that my audience is sophisticated enough to understand that I'm not into it and not enjoy it. So I stop. That's as much as I think about the audience when it comes to making my videos. When it comes to the support I get, the comments, the donations, the engagement, I love that. But when it comes to actually making my videos, I make them for me. And I'm grateful when people give me feedback, positive or negative. You know, and I'm not going to say that I don't enjoy the positive feedback more so than maybe I enjoy the negative. But I appreciate it all because several times now I've been corrected. I've made mistakes and I've learned something from the process. So there you go.
Consider who's tuning into your channel and if your videos are truly welcoming a diverse audience.
I say what I think, and people watching my videos are entirely free to agree or disagree or partially one or the other as much as they want. I don't censor comments unless it's spam, and I entertain anybody coming to it. I don't monitor the demographics of who's watching my videos. I just appreciate the people that take the time. There you go.
Okay, I know I just gave you a lot of questions and stats, but this is a great opportunity to use your own channel to increase inclusion. We'll cover more in the Creator Academy lesson linked in the description. Do you have any questions? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching.
Okay, well, there you go, guys. That was YouTube's advice or questions to ask myself about making my channel more inclusive, I guess. But all right, well, sorry for the scattershot content today. It was a little bit playing it by ear. You get it? Playing it by ear because of the sound quality. And yeah. So now I'm going to turn over the last few minutes to you guys. 5 minutes, make it at the top of the hour, make it an even 2 hours for the show. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, please put them in the chat now. I'll get to as many as I can. I'll say some hellos in the meantime and start with what I see in front of me. Virgil Grin, hello. Humble Clay, hello. Sarjim, hello. Or did I say Sarjim twice? I might have said Sarjim twice. Data Wasteland, hello. Let's see. And anybody else I'm missing here? Probably. Mike Downey, hello. And I'm scrolling up a bit. Corey Suzuki, hello. Sinatra says, hello. Mike R, hello. Great unscripted video, Scribelight. Well, yeah, this was the most unscripted of all unscripted videos because I tried out 2 different videos that had lousy sound quality. I'd hoped for better, got what I got, and instead we did a YouTube video. The original Shroom, hello. That wasn't very diverse or inclusive, only a POC woman. Well, she was friendly. She was welcoming. She, that's fine by me. I mean, an individual person trying to invite as many people in to have a conversation. That's inclusion for me. Let's see. Mike Downey says, hi, Scribe, bell didn't go off. Well, YouTube, why are you hindering me from being more inclusive? Why are you preventing my audience from even knowing that I have a video out, even after they've gone to the effort of hitting the bell? Sinatra says, yep, never got the notification. Wow. I don't know that I have the problem with inclusion so much as YouTube has a problem with notification. Maybe. But anyway. Irate Prostate, goddamn YouTube. Yeah. Kiever Dam, exactly, Scribe. Humble Clay did. All right. Sorry, talking about something else. Sarjim says, Scribe, it was only once. Say it again. I said Sarjim. So, Sarjim. Frosted Glass, I don't want any more shit about Medium articles, Mr. TEDx, LOL. But, you see, I give myself shit for TEDx. It's not like some kind of unknown territory. So, no. We're going to still give you shit for Medium articles. Just because we can. Deck Wow. Well, by her own points, her video was only inclusive of about 3% of the population. Yes, but she was speaking to all creators. So it wasn't just one demographic, although she seemed to be, I don't know, indicating that certain racial demographics are less profitable than others. At least that's the only conclusion I can come to based on the scattered information she provided. Let's see. Humble Clay Scribelight, do you do a video on the TEDx speaker that promoted pedophilia? If you're talking about that girl in Belgium, I think it was, or maybe Germany, I forget. Yes, I did do a video on that. I did not cover the entire talk because I got sickened listening to this person's apologia for pedophilia and her trying to equate pedophilia with a sexual orientation. You can find that video in my TEDx playlist or the TED Excellence playlist. It's a while back now. You'll have to search for it. The thumbnail says something about like, oh God, what was it? Don't take candy from strangers or something. Something like that. I forget, but yes, I did do a video on that one. Sarjim says, TEDx is cool. The retarded need a place to congregate. Like I say, for every TEDx video I actually do a video on, I've watched like 3 or 4 that were anywhere from neutral to very interesting. TEDx is a smorgasbord. And TED itself, actual TED Talks, are more like TEDx now than they were in the past. But there's been several TED and TEDx talks I've watched that I actually found interesting. Sometimes I post them on Twitter when I find them interesting. Like, well, this is an interesting conversation. There was one lady who did a presentation on fundraising, just like the act of fundraising, the business of fundraising for nonprofits or for political movements and things like that. And just her advice on fundraising and the mechanisms thereof were really interesting. I didn't do a video on it because I didn't have anything to object to or anything to comment on other than, wow, that's really interesting. Let's see. And in the last minute, let's see. Humble Clay, TED Talk has become more like TEDx over the past 2 years. Yes, the threshold of quality that used to differentiate TED from TEDx has diminished over the years, from my perspective. I mean, I haven't looked at every single TED video, but I've seen a lot of subject matter in TED videos that otherwise I would have sworn were TEDx fodder. So there's that. Let's see. And Corey Suzuki says, you like my dad's TEDx talk, right? I did. I watched it. I was very emotional. And your dad's a great guy. He really is. And I mean, you as well for having gone through all that and came out as well adjusted as you seem. But then, guys, there is a Corey Suzuki familiar with the matter about surviving brain cancer, if you'd like to take a look at that. Also, you can check out my most recent familiar with the matter, which is my most recent video on employee resource groups, which is itself a reaction of a kind to my previous live stream about ERGs. You see, it's all interconnected. It's all intersectional after a fashion. And therefore, it's all inclusive. Everyone, thank you so much for joining me today on this amazing adventure into videos, audios, and commentaries. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys have a good rest of your Sunday. Everybody who've donated, thank you so much for your generosity. Moderators, those of you who are here, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though my Sunday audiences are at least as good as my regular audiences. Because, you know, we're all inclusive. Everyone have a good rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later. And, as always, thank you for watching.